The logging town of Ridgeway looked exactly as Kellen Voss remembered it: tired buildings lining a main street that had seen better days, pickup trucks parked at odd angles, and the smell of sawdust hanging in the air like a permanent fog. He pulled his black Ford F-150 up to the curb outside his brother's house, a modest two-story with peeling white paint and a front porch that sagged on one side. "Daddy, why does Uncle Silas live here?" Mila asked from her car seat, pressing her small face against the window. At 4 years old, she had developed the habit of asking questions that cut straight to the heart of things. "Because this is where his work is, sweetheart." Kellen unbuckled his seatbelt and studied the house. Something felt off, though he couldn't pinpoint what. Maybe it was the drawn curtains in the middle of the day, or the way the yard looked too perfect, like someone had spent considerable effort making sure nothing appeared out of place. He lifted Mila from her seat and set her feet on the cracked sidewalk. She immediately reached for his hand, her fingers small and warm against his calloused palm. The drive from Eugene had taken 3 hours. 3 hours of listening to children's music and answering endless questions about why trees were green and whether clouds had feelings. The front door opened before they reached the porch steps. Silas emerged, his face breaking into a wide grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. At 40, Kellen's older brother had always been the bigger man: broader shoulders, thicker arms, a presence that filled doorways. But now he looked smaller somehow, worn down by something Kellen couldn't identify. "Kellen, you made it." Silas pulled him into a bear hug that felt forced. "And look at this little princess." Mila hid behind Kellen's leg, suddenly shy. She had only met her uncle twice before, and both times had been brief visits when Silas came to Eugene for their father's funeral arrangements. "Hey, big brother." Kellen studied Silas's face. Dark circles under his eyes, a nervous energy in the way he kept shifting his weight from foot to foot. "You look tired. Just busy season at the mill. You know how it is." Silas rubbed the back of his neck. "Come on inside. Marissa's made lunch." The house's interior surprised Kellen. When Silas had married Marissa 3 years ago, the place had been a bachelor pad: mismatched furniture, empty beer bottles on every surface, clothes draped over chairs. Now it looked like something from a magazine. Persian rugs covered hardwood floors, artwork hung at precise angles on freshly painted walls, and everything had a place. Marissa appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. At 36, she remained striking: auburn hair that caught the light, green eyes that seemed to catalog everything, a smile that showed perfect teeth. She wore a blue sundress that probably cost more than most people in Ridgeway made in a week. "Kellen, so good to see you again." She moved forward with practiced grace, offering her cheek for a kiss that Kellen barely acknowledged. "And Mila, you've grown so much since Christmas." Mila pressed closer to Kellen's leg. Children had instincts about people that adults often ignored. His daughter had never warmed to Marissa, not even when presented with expensive gifts and overly sweet attention. "Thanks for having us," Kellen said, though the words fell hollow. He had come to Ridgeway because Silas had called 3 times in the past week, each time sounding more strained, claiming he needed to talk about something important. But now, standing in this perfectly arranged living room, his brother seemed eager to discuss anything except why he had insisted Kellen visit. "Lunch is almost ready," Marissa announced. "I made chicken salad sandwiches and that soup you used to love, Silas. The one with the vegetables." Kellen watched his brother's reaction. Silas nodded and smiled, but his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. In Afghanistan, Kellen had learned to read body language like a survival skill. Fear had a specific posture, guilt another. Silas displayed both. "Smells great," Kellen lied. He could smell the soup, but underneath it lurked something else, something damp and stale, like laundry left too long in a washing machine. They settled in the living room, Mila on the floor with a coloring book Marissa had produced from somewhere. The Persian rug was thick and ornate, clearly expensive. Kellen remembered when Silas could barely afford carpet from the discount store in town. "So how's the fabrication business?" Silas asked, his voice too loud for the small room. "Good. Steady work. Started a new contract with the city for park equipment." Kellen kept his answers short. Something about this visit felt rehearsed, like Silas and Marissa had practiced their parts beforehand. That's wonderful, Marissa said. It's so important to build relationships with municipal clients. Very stable revenue stream. Kellen raised an eyebrow. Since when did Marissa know anything about municipal revenue streams? When they had met, she had been working part-time at a craft store and living with 2 roommates in a cramped apartment. Speaking of relationships, Silas said, clearing his throat. How are things with you and dating? Anyone special? Not interested. Kellen's tone cut off that line of conversation. His divorce from Rebecca had been finalized 8 months ago, and he had no desire to discuss his personal life with anyone, especially Marissa. Mila looked up from her coloring book, crayons scattered around her small hands. She studied the room with the intense focus that children brought to new environments, taking in details that adults missed. This house is different, she announced. Different house, sweetheart? Kellen asked. It sounds different underneath. Marissa's laugh came too quickly, sharp and bright. Underneath? What do you mean, honey? Mila tilted her head, listening to something only she could hear. Like when you put your ear on the floor at home and hear the water pipes. But this is different. This sounds like she paused, her small face serious. Like what? Kellen prompted. Like crying. The silence that followed Mila's observation stretched for several heartbeats. Kellen watched Marissa's face carefully, noting how her smile never wavered, but her knuckles went white where she gripped her coffee cup. Children have such active imaginations, Marissa said, her voice maintaining its practiced warmth. Old houses make all sorts of sounds. Settling, you know. The foundation shifting. Silas nodded too enthusiastically. Yeah, this place creaks and groans all night. Drives me crazy sometimes. But Mila wasn't finished. She set down her crayons and pressed her ear against the Persian rug, her small body still as she listened. After a moment, she sat up, her eyes wide. Daddy, who's the boy crying in the basement? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Kellen felt his muscles tense, the same automatic response that had kept him alive through 3 tours overseas. Danger had a specific smell, a particular quality of silence that preceded violence, that Marissa's laugh this time sounded like glass breaking. Oh, sweetheart, there's no basement here. This house doesn't have a basement. Just a crawl space for the pipes and electrical. Kellen studied her face. The laugh had come too fast, and her eyes shifted away from Mila when she spoke. In interrogations, he had learned that liars often struggled to maintain eye contact with children. Something about their innocence made deception harder. But I can't hear him, Mila insisted. He's sad. He wants his mama. Mila, Kellen said gently, why don't you color that flower purple? I like purple flowers. His daughter picked up a crayon, but she kept glancing at the floor beneath the rug. Kellen made a mental note of her behavior. Mila had always been sensitive to things other people missed, sounds, emotions, the subtle tension that filled rooms when adults were upset. Kids, Silas said with forced lightness. Remember when you thought you could hear monsters in the walls at Dad's place? Kellen did remember, but he also remembered being 8 years old and eventually discovering that the monsters were actually mice that had made nests in the insulation. Children often heard things adults ignored. I should check on lunch, Marissa announced, standing abruptly. Kellen, would you mind helping me in the kitchen? I want to hear more about your business. It wasn't a request. Kellen glanced at Silas, who had turned his attention to Mila's coloring book with sudden fascination. His brother's hands shook slightly as he pointed to different crayon colors. Sure. Kellen followed Marissa into the kitchen, noting how she closed the door behind them. The kitchen matched the rest of the house, updated appliances, granite countertops, everything spotless and arranged with magazine precision. She's a very imaginative child, Marissa said, opening the refrigerator and pulling out ingredients with sharp, efficient movements. It's wonderful, really. Such creativity. Mila doesn't usually make things up. Marissa's knife paused for just a moment as she sliced tomatoes. Oh, I'm sure she believes what she's hearing. But old houses, you know, the acoustics can be strange. Sounds from neighbors, traffic, even the heating system can seem like they're coming from somewhere else. Kellen leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. It's spring. The heating system isn't running. Well, no, but there are other explanations. Pipes settling, wood expanding and contracting, even small animals that might have gotten into the walls. Marissa's voice remained steady, but she kept her eyes on her work. Point is, there's definitely no basement. This house was built on a slab foundation. Through the kitchen window, Kellen could see the backyard. A wooden deck, some flower beds, and what looked like recently turned soil in one corner. The earth was darker there, as if someone had been digging. "Nice yard," he said. "Thank you. I've been working on the landscaping, trying to make it more homey. Looks like you moved some dirt around." Marissa's knuckles went white around the knife handle. "Just planted some bulbs for next spring. Tulips and daffodils. They need to go in early." Kellen nodded, filing away another inconsistency. It was May. Tulip and daffodil bulbs were planted in fall, not spring. From the living room came the sound of Mila's voice, bright and chattering as she showed Silas her coloring. But underneath her words, Kellen heard something else, a sound so faint he almost missed it. A thump. Rhythmic and distant, like someone tapping on wood. Marissa heard it too. Her knife slipped, and she drew in a sharp breath as a thin line of blood appeared on her finger. "Damn it," she muttered, rushing to the sink. "You okay?" "Just a small cut." "I'm fine." She wrapped a paper towel around her finger, but Kellen could see the blood seeping through. "Could you hand me that first aid kit from the drawer by the stove?" As Kellen opened the drawer, he took inventory of its contents. Band-aids, antiseptic cream, gauze, and hanging on a small hook at the back, a brass key. Old-fashioned, the kind that opened padlocks or antique doors. "Here." He handed her the first aid kit, but his eyes lingered on the key. "Thank you." Marissa wrapped her finger quickly, then began assembling sandwiches with renewed focus. "You know, Silas has been under a lot of stress lately. Work pressures, family concerns. Sometimes I think he sees problems where there aren't any." "What kind of family concerns?" Marissa's hand stilled. "Oh, just the usual. Money, responsibilities. You know how it is." But Kellen didn't know how it was. Silas had never mentioned financial problems, and the house certainly didn't suggest money troubles. If anything, his brothers seemed to be living well above what a mill worker's salary should support. The thumping sound came again, fainter this time, but unmistakable. Marissa dropped a piece of lettuce and bent to pick it up, her movements sharp and nervous. "I think I'll use the bathroom before lunch," Kellen said. "Of course. Down the hall, second door on the right." But Kellen didn't head for the bathroom. Instead, he stepped into the hallway and studied the floor. The Persian rug in the living room extended partway into the hall, but here he could see the hardwood clearly. Beautiful wood, recently refinished except for one section near the wall where the boards didn't quite line up. He knelt and ran his fingers along the seam. The wood was slightly raised here, as if covering something underneath. A closer look revealed what might have been hinges, painted over, but still visible if someone knew what to look for. "Finding everything okay?" Marissa's voice came from directly behind him. Kellen stood, his movement casual but ready. "Just admiring the floors. Beautiful work. Did you refinish them yourselves?" "Had it done professionally last year. Worth the investment." Marissa's smile remained in place, but her eyes were cold. "The bathroom is just there." As Kellen walked toward the bathroom, he heard Marissa's heels clicking back toward the kitchen. The sound was rapid, urgent, and underneath it, so faint he had to strain to hear, came that rhythmic thumping again. Someone was definitely down there, and they were trying to get out. Kellen locked the bathroom door and turned on the faucet to mask any sound. His mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. The key in the kitchen drawer, the misaligned floorboards, Mila's insistence about hearing crying, it all pointed to something Marissa and Silas desperately wanted to hide. But he gave it 5 minutes, enough time to establish his presence in the bathroom, then flushed the toilet and ran water again. When he emerged, he could hear voices in the kitchen, Marissa speaking in low, urgent tones, and Silas responding with what sounded like weak protests. The living room was empty. Mila had left her coloring book open to a page with a purple flower, just as he had suggested. But she was nowhere to be seen. "Mila," he called, keeping his voice casual. "Out here, Daddy." Her voice came from the backyard. Through the window, he could see her on the deck with Silas, who was pointing out different birds at a feeder. His brother's posture looked forced, like he was following a script. Kellen moved quickly to the hallway. The Persian rug was slightly askew, one corner lifted just enough to reveal the seam he had noticed earlier. He pulled the rug back further and found what he was looking for: a trapdoor, nearly invisible thanks to expert craftsmanship, but definitely there. The thumping sound came again, clearer now. 3 short taps, a pause, then 3 more. Someone was using a code, trying to communicate. The brass key from the kitchen drawer fit the small padlock perfectly. Kellen turned it slowly, wincing at the small click as the lock disengaged. The trapdoor opened on well-oiled hinges, revealing wooden steps leading down into darkness. The smell hit him immediately: damp earth, unwashed bodies, and underneath it all, the sharp scent of fear. He pulled out his phone and activated the flashlight, then descended the steps as quietly as possible. The basement was larger than the house's footprint should have allowed, extending under what must be the neighbor's property. Rough concrete walls, a dirt floor, and in the far corner, barely illuminated by his phone's light, a figure hunched against the wall. Kellen moved closer, his military training keeping his footsteps silent. As the light fell on the figure, his blood turned to ice. It was a boy, maybe 12 or 13 years old, with dark hair that hung in dirty strands around a pale, thin face. His clothes were torn and filthy, and around his left ankle was a heavy chain that connected to a bolt driven deep into the concrete wall. When the boy looked up, Kellen's world tilted on its axis that he knew that face. The eyes were the same deep brown as Silas's. The nose had the same slight crook from an old break, and the stubborn set of the jaw was pure Voss genetics. Liam. Kellen's voice came out as a whisper. The boy's eyes widened. Uncle Kellen? Is that really you? Liam Voss. Silas's son from his first marriage, the boy who had disappeared 8 months ago while walking home from school. The police had investigated for weeks, interviewing classmates and teachers, searching the surrounding woods, following up on every possible lead. Eventually, they had concluded that Liam had probably run away, despite his mother's insistence that he would never do such a thing. Kellen had attended the search parties, had helped distribute flyers with Liam's picture, had watched his brother break down during television interviews where he begged for his son's safe return, all while the boy was chained in his own basement. Jesus Christ, Liam. Are you hurt? Kellen knelt beside his nephew, examining the chain around his ankle. The metal had rubbed the skin raw, and Liam's wrist bore what looked like rope burns. I'm okay. Scared, but okay. Liam's voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't used it much recently. She brings me food and water. Says I have to stay quiet or something bad will happen to Mom. But Kellen already knew the answer. Marissa. She said Mom didn't want me anymore, that she was going to send me away to live with strangers. Said this was the only way to keep me safe until she could find a better family for me. Kellen felt rage building in his chest, hot and pure. Marissa had kidnapped his nephew, chained him like an animal, and convinced him it was for his own good. Meanwhile, she and Silas had played the grieving parents, accepting sympathy and donations from the community. Liam, listen to me. Your mom never stopped looking for you. She loves you more than anything in the world. This woman lied to you. Tears began streaming down the boy's face. I knew it. I knew Mom wouldn't give me up. But Marissa said, she showed me papers. Said Mom had signed them. Forged papers. All lies. Kellen examined the chain more closely. It was secured with another padlock, but the bolt in the wall looked newer than the rest of the basement. With the right tools, it could be removed. Footsteps creaked on the floor above them. Marissa's voice drifted down, calling his name with artificial sweetness. I have to go back up, Kellen whispered. But I'm going to get you out of here, I promise. Can you stay quiet for a little longer? Liam nodded, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. Be careful, Uncle Kellen. She's not what she pretends to be. She gets angry when people don't do what she wants. As Kellen climbed the stairs, his mind was already working through possibilities. He couldn't just grab Liam and run not without knowing the full scope of what was happening here. Marissa clearly had some kind of hold over Silas, and there might be others involved. He needed information before he acted. The trapdoor closed with a soft click, and Kellen replaced the padlock and smoothed the rug back into position. When he turned around, Marissa was standing at the end of the hallway, her arms crossed and her green eyes cold as winter. "You shouldn't have gone down there," she said. Kellen stood in the hallway, staring at Marissa. Her words hung in air between them like a loaded weapon. Neither moved for several seconds, each taking the measure of the other. "I don't know what you think you saw down there," Marissa continued, her voice steady but her eyes sharp as broken glass. "But I think we need to have a conversation. I think we do." Kellen's tone revealed nothing. In Afghanistan, he had learned to keep his emotions locked away when facing an enemy. Show nothing. Give nothing. Wait for the right moment to strike. They walked back to the living room in silence. Silas and Mila were still on the deck, her bright laughter carrying through the glass doors as she chased a butterfly around the railing. His brother kept glancing toward the house, his face tight with worry. Marissa settled on the couch and smoothed her sundress, every movement calculated. "Sit down, Kellen. Please." He remained standing, positioning himself between her and the hallway. If she tried to run, she would have to go through him. "That boy in the basement," she began, her voice taking on the tone of someone explaining something to a child. "His name is Liam. He's Silas's son from his previous marriage. I know who he is. Then you know his mother is an unstable woman. Drug problems, abusive relationships, complete inability to provide a safe environment for a child." Marissa's hands remained folded in her lap, but Kellen noticed her knuckles were white. Liam was in real danger living with her. "So you kidnapped him." "I saved him." The words came out sharp. Then she seemed to catch herself and softened her tone. "His mother was planning to sell him to pay off her drug debts. Men were coming to the house, making threats. Liam called Silas, terrified, begging for help." Kellen watched her face as she spoke. Every word was delivered with complete conviction, but he had seen enough interrogations to recognize a rehearsed story. The details were too neat, the timeline too convenient. "Where is his mother now?" "Rehabilitation facility in Portland. Court ordered after her latest arrest." Marissa reached for a folder on the coffee table and pulled out several official-looking documents. "Everything is documented. Child Services was involved. We followed all the proper procedures." Kellen glanced at the papers without touching them. They looked authentic, but documents could be forged. More importantly, they didn't explain why Liam was chained in a basement instead of living upstairs as part of the family. Why the chains? Marissa's composure slipped for just a moment. "Liam has been through trauma. He sometimes tries to run back to his mother, even knowing how dangerous it is for him. The restraint is temporary, just until he adjusts to his new situation." "Bullshit." "Excuse me. I said bullshit." Kellen stepped closer, using his size to apply pressure. "That boy has been missing for 8 months. The whole town searched for him. Police investigated for weeks. You're telling me you had legal custody this entire time and never told anyone? The situation is complicated. The situation is that you kidnapped a child and convinced my brother to go along with it." Kellen's voice remained level, but heat was building behind his words. "What I can't figure out is why." The sliding door opened, and Silas stepped inside, Mila's hand in his. His face was pale, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool spring air. "Everything okay in here?" Silas asked, but his eyes wouldn't meet Kellen's. "Your wife was just explaining why your son is chained in the basement like an animal." Silas flinched as if he had been slapped. "Kellen, it's not what you think. We're trying to help him. By holding him prisoner, he's not a prisoner." The words exploded from Silas with desperate force. "He's safe. He's fed. He has books to read, clean clothes. Do you know what his life was like before? Do you know what his mother put him through?" Mila looked up at the adults with wide eyes, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. Kellen knelt down to her level. "Sweetheart, why don't you go color in the kitchen for a few minutes? I'll get you some juice." "Is Uncle Silas mad?" she whispered. "No, baby. We're just talking about grown-up things. Go ahead." After Mila disappeared into the kitchen, Kellen turned back to his brother. "Tell me the truth, Silas. All of it." Silas collapsed into a chair, his hands shaking. His mother, she was going to give him away. Not to adoption agency, but to some people who wanted to hurt children. She owed them money, and Liam was going to be payment. "How do you know this?" Because she told me. Marissa answered before Silas could speak. She called here drunk one night, crying about what she was going to have to do. We couldn't let that happen. So you called the police. We tried. Silas's voice was barely above a whisper. But she denied everything the next day. Said she had been joking, that she would never hurt Liam. The police said there was nothing they could do without evidence. Kellen studied his brother's face. Silas was lying, but there might be some truth mixed in with the deception. Either way, it didn't justify what they had done. Even if that's true, it doesn't explain keeping him chained in a basement for 8 months. It doesn't explain lying to the police during the investigation. It doesn't explain letting his mother think her son was dead or kidnapped by strangers. We were going to tell everyone once we had proper custody, Marissa said, but the legal process takes time, and in the meantime, we had to keep him safe. Safe. Kellen's voice rose for the first time. That boy has rope burns on his wrists. His ankle is raw from the chain. He's pale as a ghost and scared out of his mind. That's not safety, that's abuse. Silas buried his face in his hands. We did what we thought was best. You did what she told you to do. Kellen looked from his brother to Marissa, pieces of the puzzle beginning to form a picture he didn't like. This was your idea, wasn't it? You convinced Silas that kidnapping his own son was some kind of rescue mission. Marissa's mask of concern finally slipped completely. Her green eyes turned cold and calculating. You don't understand the situation, Kellen. You don't know what that woman was capable of. I know what you're capable of. And I know my brother isn't smart enough to plan something like this on his own. Hey, Silas protested weakly. It's true. Kellen kept his attention focused on Marissa. Silas might be gullible enough to believe your story, but I'm not. You wanted something from this, and it wasn't just to save a child from his mother. Marissa stood up slowly, her movements now predatory rather than graceful. I think this conversation is over. Maybe you should take your daughter and go back to Eugene. Maybe I should call the police instead. And tell them what? That a boy is living with his legal guardians in a safe home. She gestured toward the folder of documents. Everything we've done is documented and approved by the proper authorities. Kellen stared at the papers again. If they were authentic, the situation became much more complicated. But something about Marissa's desperation to show them felt wrong. I want to talk to Liam again. Absolutely not. Marissa stepped between Kellen and the hallway. That boy has been through enough trauma. The last thing he needs is more confusion from people who don't understand his situation. I'm his uncle. You're a stranger to him. He's lived here for 8 months. We're his family now. The possessiveness in her voice made Kellen's skin crawl. She talked about Liam like he was a piece of property rather than a human being. From the kitchen came the sound of chairs scraping against the floor, followed by Mila's voice calling out, "Daddy!" I can hear him again. All 3 adults froze. Then Marissa was moving toward the kitchen with quick, sharp steps. What did you hear, sweetheart? Marissa's voice carried forced cheer as she entered the kitchen ahead of Kellen. Mila sat at the small table, her coloring book forgotten, pressing her ear against the wall. The crying stopped, but now there's tapping, like someone knocking on a door. Kellen met Marissa's eyes across the room. The tapping was probably Liam trying to communicate after hearing voices above. Smart kid, using the only tool he had available. Old pipes, Marissa said quickly. They make all sorts of noises when the water pressure changes. But Mila shook her head. It's not pipes. It's a pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short again. Like a code. SOS. Liam was tapping out SOS. How does a 4-year-old know Morse code? Marissa demanded, suspicion creeping into her voice. Daddy taught me, Mila said proudly. We play games with flashlights sometimes. Kellen had indeed taught her basic Morse code during their camping trips, though he hadn't expected her to remember it so clearly. His daughter's sharp mind was both a blessing and a potential danger in this situation. That's very clever, Marissa said, but her smile looked painted on. But I think what you're hearing is just the house settling. Old buildings make lots of sounds. The tapping came again, clearer this time. ... Liam was repeating the pattern, making sure anyone listening would understand. Kellen needed to get his daughter away from this house, but he also couldn't leave Liam behind. The boy had been imprisoned for 8 months, and God only knew what Marissa might do if she felt cornered. "You know what?" Kellen said, forcing casualness into his voice. "I think Mila and I should head into town. Get some ice cream, let you folks have some quiet time. We'll come back for dinner." Relief flickered across Marissa's face. "That's a wonderful idea. There's a nice little place on Main Street. They have those Sundays kids love." "Sounds perfect." Kellen lifted Mila from her chair. "Come on, princess. Let's go explore Ridgeway." As they gathered their things, Kellen caught Silas watching him with worried eyes. His brother opened his mouth as if to say something, then closed it again. Whatever hold Marissa had over him, it was strong enough to keep him silent even when family was involved. The drive into town took less than 5 minutes, but it gave Kellen time to think. He needed information before he could act, and he needed to get Mila somewhere safe while he gathered it. Main Street looked like every other logging town's commercial district, a mix of businesses that served the local population and others that had clearly seen better days. The ice cream shop Marissa had mentioned sat between a hardware store and a beauty salon, its cheerful red awning incongruous among the faded storefronts. "Can we really get ice cream?" Mila asked as Kellen parked the truck. "Absolutely. But first, Daddy needs to make some phone calls. Can you be patient for a few minutes?" The shop was nearly empty, just a teenage girl behind the counter and an elderly man reading a newspaper at a corner table. Kellen ordered Mila a vanilla cone with sprinkles and sat her at a table near the window where he could keep an eye on her. His first call was to Rebecca, his ex-wife. Despite their bitter divorce, she remained a good mother to Mila, and he trusted her judgment. "Kellen, is everything okay?" Rebecca's voice carried immediate concern. She knew he rarely called unless something was wrong. "I need you to pick up Mila tonight. Can you drive to Ridgeway?" "Ridgeway? I thought you were visiting your brother for the day." "Plans changed. There's a situation here, and I need to know Mila is safe." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "What kind of situation?" Kellen glanced around the ice cream shop, making sure no one was listening. "The kind that might involve police before it's over. I can't explain everything right now, but I need Mila away from here. I'll leave in 20 minutes. Where should I meet you?" "There's an ice cream shop on Main Street. Red awning, can't miss it." "Kellen, be careful. Whatever this is about, don't do anything stupid." "I won't." But even as he said it, Kellen knew he was lying. What he was planning was definitely stupid. It was also necessary. After ending the call, he approached the elderly man with a newspaper. "Excuse me, do you mind if I ask you something? I'm visiting town and heard there was some trouble with missing kids a while back." The man looked up, his weathered face creasing with concern. "You talking about the Voss boy? Terrible thing. Whole town turned out to search for him. Did they ever find him?" "Nope. Police think he ran away, but his mama never believed it. Sweet woman, that one. Broke her heart when the boy disappeared. His mama's still around. Lives over in Millfield now, about 30 minutes east. Moved there after she couldn't stand being in the house where her boy grew up. Can't say I blame her." Kellen absorbed this information. If Liam's mother was in Millfield, she was close enough to be part of whatever resolution came next. Anything else strange happen around that time? Other kids go missing? Any unusual activity? The old man's eyes sharpened. "You writing a book or something?" "Just curious. I have a daughter, so stories like that stick with me." "Well, funny you mention it, but there was another boy went missing about a year before the Voss kid. Different situation, though. That one was from a broken home, real troubled family. Most folks figured he was better off wherever he ended up." "What was his name?" "Hale. Rowan Hale's little brother. Rowan's got himself a reputation around here, drinking, fighting, some say worse. When his brother disappeared, nobody looked too hard. Figured the kid was trying to get away from a bad situation." Kellen felt pieces clicking together in his mind. Two missing boys, both from complicated family situations. And now he had found one of them chained in a basement while the other remained unaccounted for. This Rowan Hale still live in town. Runs a garage on the south side. Fixes cars, mostly. Keeps to himself these days, but... The old man lowered his voice. "Word is he's been spending time with that Voss woman. The one who married into the family after the first wife left. Marissa." Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. "Thank you for the information." Kellen shook the man's hand. "I appreciate your time." As he returned to Mila's table, his phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. On my way. Be there in an hour. He had an hour to gather more information before his daughter was safe. An hour to figure out exactly what Marissa was planning and who else might be involved. The teenage girl behind the counter had been listening to their conversation with poorly concealed interest. When Kellen approached, she leaned forward eagerly. You asking about missing kids? Maybe. You know something about it. She glanced around to make sure they were alone, then lowered her voice. My boyfriend works at the garage where Rowan Hale hangs out. Says Rowan's been acting weird lately. Talking about making big money, taking trips. Real different from his usual broke-ass self. When did this start? Few months ago, maybe? Right around the time he started seeing that married woman from up on Elm Street. Elm Street was where Silas lived. The pieces were forming a clear picture now, and Kellen didn't like what he saw. Rebecca arrived exactly when she said she would, her silver sedan pulling up outside the ice cream shop as the afternoon sun began to fade behind the mountains. Mila ran to her mother with sticky fingers and chocolate smears around her mouth, chattering excitedly about her day and the strange house with mysterious sounds. She heard something, Rebecca asked quietly as Mila climbed into the back seat. Kids pick up on things adults miss. Kellen kissed his daughter's forehead through the car window. Be good for Mama. I'll see you tomorrow. When will you come home, Daddy? Soon, baby. Very soon. As Rebecca's car disappeared down Main Street, Kellen felt a familiar coldness settle over him. It was the same detachment that had served him well in combat, emotions locked away, focus narrowed to mission objectives, everything else reduced to obstacles or assets. His mission was simple: gather evidence and get Liam to safety. Everything else was secondary. He drove back toward Elm Street, but parked 3 blocks away in the lot behind a closed auto repair shop. The walk to Silas's house took him through residential streets lined with modest homes, their windows glowing yellow in the twilight. The garage that the teenager had mentioned wasn't hard to find. Hale's Auto Repair occupied a converted gas station, its bays dark and empty at this hour. But a black pickup truck sat in the gravel lot behind the building, and light leaked from underneath a side door. Kellen circled the building carefully, staying in the shadows cast by overgrown hedges. Through a dirt-streaked window, he could see 2 figures: a man working under the hood of an old sedan and a woman in a blue sundress pacing back and forth while talking on a cell phone. Marissa, and the man had to be Rowan Hale. Kellen pulled out his phone and activated the recording app, then crept closer to the window. The glass was thin enough that voices carried clearly. Told you he was suspicious, Marissa was saying, her voice sharp with frustration. The moment he went down those stairs, I knew we had a problem. So what do you want me to do about it? Rowan's voice was rough, uneducated. Kill him. Don't be stupid. He's a veteran with a missing persons case attached to his family. That would bring too much attention. Then what? Marissa stopped pacing and stared at Rowan. We move up the timeline. Make the transfer tonight instead of next week. Tonight? The buyers aren't expecting delivery until... The buyers will take delivery when we tell them to. We can't risk keeping the boy here any longer, not with Kellen sniffing around. Kellen's blood went cold. They were talking about selling Liam to someone. Human trafficking, just like the old man in the ice cream shop had suggested about Liam's mother. What about the brother? Rowan asked. Silas will do what I tell him to do. He's too weak to cause problems. And if the uncle goes to the police, with what evidence? Some story about hearing voices in a basement? By the time anyone takes him seriously, the boy will be long gone. Rowan wiped his hands on a greasy rag. I still think this is getting too complicated. Maybe we should just cut our losses. Absolutely not. Marissa's voice turned venomous. Do you know how much money we're talking about? Enough to disappear forever. Start fresh somewhere else. What about your husband? What about him? Silas served his purpose. Once this is over, I won't need him anymore. Kellen felt sick. His brother had been played from the beginning, manipulated into helping with his own son's kidnapping. And now Marissa was planning to abandon him once she had what she wanted. The new family paying extra for the fresh merchandise. Rowan asked with a laugh that made Kellen want to break through the window and kill him with his bare hands. $50,000. Cash. They specifically requested a boy between 12 and 14, healthy, no behavioral problems. Marissa's tone was businesslike, as if she were discussing the sale of livestock. Our buyer has very particular tastes. Kellen understood now. This wasn't just about money, it was about supplying children to predators. Liam wasn't being sold to a family. He was being delivered to someone who would hurt him in ways that didn't bear thinking about. "What time tonight?" Rowan asked. "Midnight. That gives us time to sedate the boy and transport him without anyone noticing. You'll drive him to the meeting point while I handle Silas." "Handle him how?" Marissa smiled, and Kellen had never seen anything so cold. "Permanent solution. Make it look like he couldn't live with the guilt over his son's disappearance. Suicide, note confessing everything. You're going to kill him. I'm going to clean up loose ends. That's what professionals do." Kellen had heard enough. He backed away from the window, his mind racing through tactical options. Midnight gave him roughly 6 hours to act. He could call the police now, but without concrete evidence, it would be his word against theirs. And even if the police believed him, Marissa might kill Silas and disappear before they could mount a proper response. This required a more direct approach. He made his way back to his truck and drove to a 24-hour gas station on the edge of town. The clerk was a bored-looking kid who barely glanced up when Kellen bought a prepaid cell phone, a small digital recorder, duct tape, zip ties, and a box of energy bars. The recorder was voice-activated and small enough to hide easily. If he could get close enough to record more of their conversation, he would have evidence that no court could ignore. By the time he returned to the area around Silas's house, full darkness had fallen. The residential streets were quiet. Most families settled in for the night. He parked in a different location this time, behind a church 2 blocks away, and approached the house on foot. Lights were on in the living room and kitchen, but the curtains were drawn. Kellen circled to the backyard, using the cover of Marissa's landscaping to get close to the house. The deck stairs creaked slightly under his weight, but the sound was masked by a television playing inside. Through the kitchen window, he could see Silas sitting at the table with his head in his hands. His brother looked like a man who had given up hope, defeated by circumstances he couldn't control. Marissa was nowhere to be seen, but Kellen could hear her voice coming from deeper in the house. She was on the phone again, making arrangements of the night's activities. That he activated the small recorder and taped it under the deck railing, positioned so it would pick up conversations from the kitchen. Then he settled in to wait, hidden in the shadows beside the deck stairs. At 11:30, Rowan's black pickup pulled into the driveway. Kellen watched through the window as Marissa let him in through the front door. They spoke in low voices for several minutes. Then both headed toward the hallway that led to the basement. This was it. They were going to take Liam now. Kellen moved closer to the house, positioning himself where he could see through the living room window. The Persian rug had been pulled aside, and the trapdoor stood open. Marissa descended first, followed by Rowan carrying what looked like a small medical bag, sedatives. They were going to drug Liam to make transport easier. 5 minutes later, they emerged carrying Liam between them. The boy was conscious but drowsy, his movements sluggish. They had given him just enough to make him compliant without rendering him unconscious. As they carried him toward the front door, Liam's eyes found the window where Kellen crouched. For just a moment, their gazes met. The boy's mouth opened as if to cry out, but no sound emerged. Kellen pressed his finger to his lips, hoping Liam would understand. "Stay quiet. Help is coming." They loaded Liam into the back seat of Rowan's truck, Marissa climbing in beside him while Rowan took the wheel. As the truck backed out of the driveway, Kellen was already moving toward his own vehicle. The hunt was on. Kellen followed the black pickup at a distance, using techniques learned during reconnaissance missions overseas. Keep the target in sight, but maintain enough space to avoid detection. Use other traffic as cover when possible. Never follow directly behind for more than a few seconds. The truck headed east out of Ridgeway, taking rural roads that wound through dense forest. Perfect for a clandestine meeting, isolated, multiple escape routes, and far from any potential witnesses. After 20 minutes of driving, the pickup turned into what looked like an abandoned logging road. Kellen continued past the turnoff, then pulled over and killed his engine. He would have to follow on foot from here. The forest was thick with Douglas fir and hemlock, their branches blocking most of the moonlight. Kellen moved carefully through the underbrush, grateful for the military training that had taught him how to move silently through hostile terrain. He could hear the pickup's engine idling somewhere ahead, and gradually the forest opened into a cleared area where logging operations had taken place years earlier. The truck was parked beside a cluster of old storage buildings, their metal siding rusted and holes visible in the roofing. Two other vehicles were already there, a white van with tinted windows and a luxury sedan that looked out of place in the rural setting. 3 men stood near the van, their voices carrying across the clearing. Kellen crept closer, using the cover of stumps and debris to get within hearing range. He activated his phone's recording app, knowing that audio evidence would be crucial later. Exactly as ordered, one of the men was saying. He wore an expensive suit despite the remote location, and his voice carried an accent that Kellen couldn't place. Healthy, the right age, no family connections that will cause problems. No family connections. Marissa's laugh was sharp. The boy's father won't be a problem much longer, and his mother is a drug addict with no resources. Kellen felt rage building in his chest. Liam's mother wasn't a drug addict. He had met her several times over the years, and she was a hard-working single mother who adored her son. Another lie from Marissa's playbook. Good, the man in the suit replied. Our client appreciates reliability. He's had disappointing experiences with previous suppliers who failed to properly vet their merchandise. The way they talked about Liam made Kellen's stomach turn. A human being reduced to merchandise. A child treated as a commodity to be bought and sold. Payment as agreed? Marissa asked. The man nodded toward the van. $50,000 in cash. Unmarked bills, non-sequential numbers. Very clean. Rowan emerged from the pickup, half-carrying Liam toward the van. The boy was more alert now, the sedative wearing off, but his movements were still unsteady. When he saw the strangers, he began to struggle. I want to go home, Liam said, his voice slurred but determined. I want my mom. Shut him up, the man in the suit ordered. One of his companions produced a cloth from his pocket and moved toward Liam. Kellen recognized the setup. They were going to drug him again, probably with something stronger. That was enough. Kellen burst from cover, moving with the speed and precision that had kept him alive through 3 combat tours. The first man went down with a knife-hand strike to the throat, unconscious before he hit the ground. The second reached for a gun, but found himself facing the barrel of Kellen's pistol instead. Hands where I can see them, Kellen commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had given orders under fire. The man in the suit raised his hand slowly, his face pale in the moonlight. This is a private business transaction. You have no authority here. That's my nephew you're buying. That gives me all the authority I need. Marissa had frozen beside the van, her face a mask of shock and fury. Kellen, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You kidnapped a child and planned to sell him to predators. I understand that you manipulated my brother into helping you. I understand that you were planning to kill Silas to cover your tracks. Rowan had released Liam and was backing toward the forest, clearly planning to run. Kellen shifted his aim. Don't. The word carried enough menace to stop Rowan in his tracks. Uncle Kellen. Liam's voice was small and scared, but hopeful. I'm here, buddy. You're safe now. But even as he said it, Kellen knew the situation was far from over. He had 1 gun against 3 men, plus Marissa. Even with the element of surprise, the odds weren't in his favor for a prolonged confrontation. Everyone on the ground, hand behind your heads. The man in the suit complied reluctantly, followed by his conscious companion. Rowan hesitated, then dropped to his knees when Kellen's aim shifted back to him. Marissa, get on the ground. Go to hell. Last chance. She must have seen something in his eyes, because she finally sank to her knees beside the others. Kellen pulled out his cell phone and dialed 911, keeping his gun trained on the group. This is Kellen Voss. I need police and paramedics at the old logging site on Forest Road 237, about 20 miles east of Ridgeway. I have multiple suspects in custody for child trafficking, and I need immediate backup. Sir, can you repeat? Child trafficking operation. Armed suspects. Send everything you have. He ended the call and looked at Liam, who was swaying on his feet but trying to stay upright. "Liam, come here. Stay behind me." The boy stumbled over, and Kellen could feel him shaking. Whatever they had given him was wearing off, but he was still disoriented and scared. "How long until the police arrive?" the man in the suit asked. "Long enough for me to decide what to do with you. We haven't broken any laws." This was a legitimate adoption proceeding. Kellen laughed, but there was no humor in it. Legitimate adoptions don't happen in the middle of the night in abandoned buildings. They don't involve sedating children or paying cash to kidnappers. You can't prove. "I've been recording your conversation for the past hour. Want to hear the part where you discussed your client's particular tastes?" The man's face went white. He understood that his carefully constructed facade had crumbled completely. Sirens began wailing in the distance, growing steadily closer. Kellen felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. Backup was coming, and soon this nightmare would be over. But first, he had one more call to make. "Liam, do you remember your mom's phone number?" The boy nodded and recited the digits. Kellen dialed, putting the phone on speaker so Liam could hear. "Hello." The voice that answered was female, tired, and instantly familiar. "Mom." Liam's voice broke on the word. Silence on the other end, then a sound that might have been sobbing. "Liam? Baby, is that really you? Where are you? Are you hurt?" "I'm okay, Mom. Uncle Kellen found me. I'm safe now. Oh God, oh thank God. I never stopped looking, baby. I never stopped believing you were alive." Kellen took the phone off speaker. "This is Kellen Voss, Silas's brother. I'm with Liam right now. The police are on their way, and he's going to need medical attention. But he's alive, and he's safe." "Where has he been? What happened to him?" "That's a long story. Right now, I need you to meet us at the Ridgeway police station." "Can you do that? I'll leave right now." "Kellen, I can't. Thank you. Thank you for bringing my baby home." The sirens were getting closer now, and Kellen could see flashing lights through the trees. Soon this clearing would be full of police officers, paramedics, and crime scene technicians. Evidence would be collected, statements would be taken, and the legal machinery would begin grinding toward justice. But that was only half of what Kellen had planned. As the first police car pulled into the clearing, Kellen was already thinking about Silas. His brother was still back at the house, unaware that his wife's plan had fallen apart. Marissa had intended to kill him tonight, to tie up loose ends and eliminate potential witnesses. That wasn't going to happen. But Kellen's relationship with Silas was another matter entirely. Some betrayals could never be forgiven. The next morning arrived gray and cold, with fog rolling through the valleys like smoke from a distant fire. Kellen stood outside the Ridgeway police station, watching as cars pulled into the parking lot. He had spent the night giving statements, reviewing evidence, and coordinating with multiple law enforcement agencies. The trafficking ring was bigger than anyone had initially realized. The man in the expensive suit was actually a lawyer who specialized in facilitating illegal adoptions for wealthy clients with disturbing preferences. His network extended across 3 states, and dozens of missing children cases were being reopened as investigators pieced together the scope of the operation. Marissa had broken after 6 hours of interrogation, providing names, locations, and bank account numbers in exchange for a plea deal. Rowan had lasted even less time before admitting his role in recruiting vulnerable children from broken homes. But none of that mattered to Kellen as much as what was about to happen, that a silver minivan pulled up to the curb, and Liam's mother emerged from the passenger side. Jennifer Voss looked older than Kellen remembered, her blonde hair showing gray roots, and her face marked by lines that came from months of worry and sleepless nights. But her eyes were bright with tears of joy as she ran toward the police station entrance. Behind her came 2 women in professional attire, social workers from Child Protective Services, based on their identification badges and clipboards full of paperwork. The morning's final participant arrived in an unmarked sedan. Detective Sarah Morrison climbed out, her expression grim as she reviewed a file folder thick with evidence. She had been a lead investigator on Liam's disappearance, and discovering that the boy had been hidden in his own father's basement for 8 months had left her angry and determined to see justice done. "Everyone ready?" Detective Morrison asked as the group assembled in the parking lot. Kellen nodded. "He's expecting me to come back this morning." "Alone?" You sure you don't want backup visible from the start? I want him to see the consequences of his choices. Really see them. They drove to Elm Street in a convoy, Kellen in his truck, followed by the detective's sedan and the CPS minivan. The morning was quiet, most of Ridgeway still sleeping off the previous night's excitement. Silas's house looked peaceful in the early light, its windows reflecting the pale sun emerging through the fog. No sign of the horrors that had taken place in its basement, no indication that a child had been held prisoner beneath its perfectly manicured exterior. Kellen parked in the driveway and walked to the front door alone, as planned. The others remained in their vehicles, waiting for his signal. Silas answered on the first knock, still wearing yesterday's clothes and looking like he hadn't slept. His face was pale and drawn, and his hand shook as he gripped the doorframe. "Kellen, thank God you're back. Marissa never came home last night, and she's not answering her phone. I'm worried something happened to her. Something did happen to her. She's in jail." The words hit Silas like a physical blow. He stumbled backward, his mouth opening and closing without sound. "What do you mean? Jail for what? Child trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping. Should I go on?" Silas shook his head frantically. "No, that's impossible. Marissa was trying to help Liam. She saved him from his mother. She kidnapped him to sell him to pedophiles." Kellen stepped into the house, forcing Silas to back up further. "And she was planning to kill you tonight to cover her tracks." "You're lying." Kellen pulled out his phone and played a portion of the recording from the storage building. Marissa's voice filled the room, cold and businesslike as she discussed the $50,000 payment for fresh merchandise. Silas collapsed into a chair, his face the color of ash. "Oh God. Oh Jesus. What have I done? You helped kidnap your own son. You let him be chained in a basement for 8 months while his mother grieved for him. You lied to the police during their investigation. I thought. She said his mother was going to hurt him. Bullshit." Kellen's voice was flat and merciless. "You knew it was wrong. Every time you walked over that trap door, every time you heard him crying down there, you knew it was wrong. But you went along with it because you were too weak to stand up to her." Silas buried his face in his hands. "I was scared. She said if I didn't help her, she would leave me and take everything. The house, the money, all of it. So you chose your comfort over your son's safety." "No, I was going to make it right. I was going to figure out a way to get him back to his mother without anyone getting in trouble." "When? After another 8 months?" "After a year." Silas had no answer for that. Kellen walked to the window and signaled to the waiting vehicles. Car doors slammed as Detective Morrison, the CPS workers, and Jennifer Voss approached the house. "What's happening?" Silas asked, panic creeping into his voice. "The consequences of your choices." The front door opened without a knock, and Jennifer Voss stepped into the room. At the sight of her, Silas seemed to shrink into himself. "Hello, Silas." Her voice was steady, but tears tracked down her cheeks. "I understand you've been taking care of my son." "Jennifer, I can explain. 8 months." She cut him off, her composure cracking. "For 8 months, I thought he was dead. For 8 months, I cried myself to sleep every night. For 8 months, I blamed myself for not protecting him better. We were trying to protect him. His mother was going to. I was his mother." The words exploded from Jennifer with force that made Silas flinch. "I am his mother, and you stole him from me." Detective Morrison stepped forward, pulling handcuffs from her belt. "Silas Voss, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, child endangerment, and obstruction of justice." As the detective read him his rights, Silas looked desperately at Kellen. "Please, you have to understand. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I thought I was doing the right thing." Kellen stared at his brother for a long moment, memorizing his face. "Liam is alive because I found him, not because you grew a conscience, not because you came forward. He's alive because a 4-year-old girl heard him crying and had the courage to speak up. Kellen, please. You're my brother." "No." Kellen's voice was ice. "My brother would have protected his son. My brother would have called the police the moment someone suggested chaining a child in a basement. My brother would have chosen his family over a manipulative woman." Silas was crying now, ugly sobs that shook his whole body. "Don't do this. Don't cut me off. I need help. I need my family. You had your family. You chose to betray them. As Detective Morrison led Silas toward the door in handcuffs, he made one last desperate appeal. What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go when this is over? Kellen watched his brother being loaded into the back of a police car, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. That's not my problem anymore. 3 weeks later, Kellen sat in his lawyer's office in Eugene, reviewing documents that would finalize the sale of Silas's house. His brother had signed over power of attorney from jail, desperate to cover legal fees and restitution payments. The house would be sold, the proceeds split between Liam's therapy fund and victim compensation. The buyer is offering full asking price, the lawyer said. Should move quickly once we clear the title issues. Kellen nodded. He didn't care about the money. He cared about making sure nothing remained of the place where his nephew had suffered. His phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Liam's first therapy session went well. He's asking if you can come to dinner Sunday. Kellen typed back, I'll be there. Liam was healing, slowly but steadily. The physical effects of his imprisonment had faded within days. Proper nutrition and sunlight had restored color to his pale cheeks. The psychological healing would take longer, but he was surrounded by people who loved him, and that made all the difference. The legal proceedings were moving forward with ruthless efficiency. Marissa would spend the next 25 years in federal prison, assuming she survived that long. Child traffickers weren't popular in the general population. The lawyer and his associates faced similar sentences, their network dismantled and their client list under federal investigation. Rowan had received 15 years in exchange for his cooperation, though Kellen doubted he would serve the full sentence. Men like Rowan had a way of finding trouble in prison, and justice had many forms that asked for Silas. He had pled guilty to all charges and was looking at 8 to 12 years. His lawyer had argued for leniency based on his cooperation and claimed emotional manipulation by Marissa, but the judge had been unmoved. A father who allowed his own child to be imprisoned and sold deserved no mercy. Kellen's phone rang as he left the lawyer's office. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. Kellen Voss. This is Deputy Warden Collins at Columbia River Correctional. Your brother Silas asked me to call you. He's being transferred to the medical unit, and he requested to speak with you. Is he sick? He was attacked by other inmates last night. Nothing life-threatening, but he's pretty banged up. Says he has something important to tell you. Kellen considered hanging up. He had said everything to Silas that needed saying, but curiosity won out over indifference. I'll be there this afternoon. The drive to the prison took 2 hours, giving Kellen time to think about what he might say to his brother. They hadn't spoken since the day of his arrest, and Kellen felt no desire to offer comfort or forgiveness. Silas looked smaller in his orange jumpsuit, his face marked by purple bruises and a bandage over his left eye. He sat across from Kellen in the visitor's room, separated by reinforced glass and connected by a phone that carried their voices. Thank you for coming, Silas said, his voice muffled by swollen lips. What do you want? To apologize. To try to make you understand. There's nothing to understand. You made your choice. Silas nodded, tears starting to flow. I know I can't take it back. But I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt Liam. I thought, God help me, I thought Marissa loved him. She loved the money he represented. I know that now. I know a lot of things now. Silas wiped his nose with the back of his hand. The other inmates, they know what I did. Word gets around in here. They don't like child abusers. Good. I deserve it. I deserve all of this. Silas leaned forward, pressing his hand against the glass. But I need to ask you something. When I get out, when this is over, will you let me see him? Just once? To apologize? Kellen stared at his brother for a long moment. No, please. I know I don't have the right to ask, but you don't. And I can't stop you from contacting Liam when you're released. But I can promise that if you ever come near him or his mother, I'll finish what these inmates started. Silas's face crumpled. You really hate me that much. I don't feel anything for you at all. That's worse than hate. Standing up, Kellen prepared to leave. He had given Silas more time than he deserved. Kellen, wait. Silas's voice was desperate. We're brothers. We're family. That has to count for something. Family protects each other. Family chooses loyalty over convenience. Family doesn't change children in basements. Kellen picked up the phone one last time. You stopped being my brother the day you put that padlock on Liam's chains. He hung up the phone and walked away without looking back. 2 months after Marissa's arrest, Kellen stood in his backyard in Eugene, watching Mila and Liam chase each other around the swing set he had installed the previous weekend. Liam was staying with him for the summer, while Jennifer worked to rebuild her life, and the boy was thriving in the stable environment. "Higher, Uncle Kellen," Mila called from the swing. "Push me higher." Kellen gave her another gentle push, then checked his watch. Jennifer would arrive, soon to pick up Liam for their weekly therapy session, and then all three of them were planning to drive to the coast for a weekend camping trip. "How high can you swing?" Liam asked, taking the seat next to Mila. "To the moon," she declared. "Daddy, tell Liam about the moon." As Kellen pushed both children, he found himself thinking about second chances. Liam was getting one, surrounded by people who would never let him be hurt again. Jennifer was getting one too, rebuilding her relationship with her son and planning for their future together. But some people didn't deserve second chances. Some betrayals were too deep, some choices too harmful to ever be forgiven. "Daddy," Mila said as her swing slowed to a stop. "Do you think the boy is happy now?" "What boy, sweetheart?" "The one who was crying." "In Uncle Silas's house." Kellen looked at Liam, who was smiling as he jumped off his swing and ran toward the house. The boy who had been crying was indeed happy now, safe and loved and free. "Yes, baby. He's very happy." "Good." Mila nodded with satisfaction. "I don't want anyone to cry anymore." As Jennifer's car pulled into the driveway, Kellen lifted Mila down from her swing and called for Liam to gather his things. The boy ran to him with arms wide, and Kellen caught him in a fierce hug. "See you Sunday, buddy." "See you Sunday, Uncle Kellen. Thanks for saving me." "You saved yourself. You were brave enough to signal for help, smart enough to keep fighting. I just opened the door." As they drove away, Kellen felt a sense of completion that had been missing from his life for months. Justice had been served, his nephew was safe, and his daughter was learning that sometimes adults did the right thing, even when it was hard. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Silas. Please talk to me. I need my family." Kellen deleted the message without responding, then blocked the number. Some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. In the distance, thunder rumbled across the mountains, promising rain for the evening. Kellen picked up Mila's scattered toys and headed inside, where the warmth and light waited for them both. The boy wasn't crying anymore, and he never would again.